Now, a while back, I was on Photoshop TV and I had created a Euro collage background by using the warp tool. What I did was I took a couple of layers and used the warp tool to manipulate them in a very abstract way to create an interesting effect. And I got a couple of people emailed me asking me if they could see a little bit more on the warp tool. So what I thought I would do is actually use it in a sort of practical design sense and use it to create a really interesting design element as part of an entire composition. So, what I'm going to do is I've got my document here, and on the background layer, which is selected, I'm going to go over here and get my gradient tool. Now, because I'm lazy about creating my very own custom gradients, I simply use the ones that are in here and manipulate the colors after the fact. So I'm going to choose this one right here, which is one of the default gradients here in Photoshop, because I like the way the gradient is. I'm not so much paying attention to the color, but just the tones of the gradient itself. So with that gradient selected, I'm going to go down here to the bottom right corner, and I'm click and drag to the upper left corner here, and we get our gradient in there. And like I said, I'm not paying attention to the color because I'm going to change it. I'm going to bring up my hue saturation by Command or Control U, like this. And I'm going to click Colorize. And I want to get it to a kind of a blue hue, so I'm going to drag over here to about 220-ish. Increase that saturation and make it a little darker. About like that. Looks good. Alright. So I've got my background gradient. I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to go under Filter. Actually, no, I got to fill it with a color first. So I'm going to go to Shift, Delete. Bring up my fill dialog. I want to make sure I'm on 50% gray. Hit OK. Now I'm going to go to Filter, Sketch, Halftone Pattern. And this giant window will open up here. And I'm going to push these settings all the way to their maximum. Size all the way up, contrast all the way up, and I want to make sure I'm on dot here. You can see the dot pattern we're getting right here. And we'll hit OK. Now I'm going to get my Magic Wand tool over here. And I'm going to click just anywhere in the black area. I want it to select all the black. And we'll just hit delete. So all I have is the white dots on its own layer. Now, I'm going to bring up my free transform, Command or Control T. I'm going to hold down my Control key or right click, bring up this pull down menu here, and we're going to go to Warp. Yes, finally, the Warp tool. And each corner has these little handles right in here that I can move around and manipulate anywhere I want. And I can grab the corners as well. You can see I can move these, do anything I want with them. And I'm not holding down any keys. This is just clicking and holding and dragging all these points in here. Now what I want to do is actually grab these handles and just kind of bring these in until I'm getting kind of a interesting three-dimensional rounded effect here. But I'm actually going to I'm just going to click anywhere inside the grid here and actually maneuver this around just because it has a kind of a twisting look to it. Make it a little bit more interesting. And I could, obviously I can manipulate this all day, but once I think it looks pretty good, I'm going to hit enter, and that will commit the change. And now what I'm going to do is actually move this layer over to the side, right about like this, just so it's kind of creating kind of a frame in here. And I'm going to change this layer's blending mode to overlay. That'll give us a nice, pretty interesting lighting effect as it carries through the gradient there. Now, I've got an image of this woman here that's going to be part of my design that I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to pre-transform it, scale it down just a little bit, because I want it to be kind of in that framed area there. Right about like that. I don't want it to be in color, so I'm going to remove all the color information on this layer by Shift Command U. And then I'm going to bring up a layer mask on this layer. Click on that layer mask icon. Go get my gradient tool, and I want to change it to black to transparent. And I'm just going to come in from each side of this graphic on that layer mask and just make it as though that image is just kind of blending into that background there. And then I'm going to change this layer's blending mode also to overlay. And there we get an interesting kind of really cool background effect there. It's part of that design. Now, I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm just going to go right over here to the side and just draw a selection. It's a big, long, rectangular selection right in the middle, right about like that. And I'm going to Command Control Delete or Command or Control Backspace to fill that with my background color, which is set to white. And we'll deselect that. I'm going to double click on this layers icon to bring up my layer styles. I'm going to apply a drop shadow. And what I want to do, I'm going to be applying a layer mask to this image. And I don't want, and I also want it to mask out my effects. And by default, here in Photoshop, you can see right here where it says layer mask hides effects. So by default this is unchecked. So when I apply a layer mask, it's not going to affect the styles that I apply unless I check this box right here. So I'm going to go ahead and check that, and we'll hit OK. Now I'm going to bring up a layer mask, go ahead and get my gradient tool. Again, we're making sure we're going from black to transparent. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and from this end over here, I'm going to click and drag right to about the middle, a little bit more than the middle of that graphic. It's like that. And you can see we're getting a nice fade, about like that. Nice fade right into the image right there. And lastly, if I've already got some text set here, if I just drop in this text right here, there we get a really interesting design, and it's enhanced by this background effect that we manipulated with the warp tool. If I turn this off, it's not too bad, but we're enhancing it a little bit by adding that really awesome design element. So one of the many uses of the warp tool as generating a design element as part of your overall composition. So there you have it. Give it a try, and we'll see you next time.